Welcome to Experts on Call. Today we're going to be talking about cancer and how cancer research is leading cancer care. I think in order to understand that, it's important for us to think about where cancer care has been and where we are now. And that will allow us to understand where we're moving towards in the future. From really the very beginning of cancer care, we've understood cancer by experimentation and observation, most of which has led us to understand cancers in terms of the organ in which they start. And we talk about breast cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer, and also how those cancers look under the microscope. And this has formed the foundation of how we treat cancers today. The backbone treatments are surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. And they've had a lot of success, but at a cost. And the philosophy has always been to try and kill the cancer, but also to make sure that the patient is not harmed in that process. And the reality is that those treatments have had our patients suffer significantly. And with that comes a significant cost that our patients have had to bear. I think the future of cancer care, driven by cancer research, is quite a bit different. And we call it precision medicine and personalized care. So what is precision medicine? What that means is that we understand cancer in terms of its biology fundamentally a little bit more on the molecular and microscopic level. Cancer cells are different than normal cells because of the genes they express and ultimately the proteins within them. If we can understand those differences, then we can use targeted agents to exploit those differences and kill the cancer cells while leaving the normal cells intact. These molecularly targeted therapeutics are precision medicine. We also now understand that the immune system can attack cancers, and that's very important as well, because now we have a tool within our own body that we can unleash that power and harness it to our own benefit. I think just as important is our understanding that when we treat cancer, we aren't treating just a tumor, we're treating a patient. And with it comes a holistic approach to that patient and the family. This personalized medicine means that we put patients' wishes and their choices at the forefront of both cancer research and cancer care. This personalized medicine means that the patient hopefully experiences a better quality of life and not just cure at all costs.
Yeah, so Ottawa, we are privileged in the sense that we serve a large area and we serve a population of about 1.5 million patients who all sort of come through the same hospital and get cancer care, which is centralized. So we have a great diversity of patients that we see here in Ottawa. And we also have a group of multidisciplinary teams here in radiation oncology, surgical oncology, medical oncology, and other allied health professionals where we can manage these complex cancers. And what has happened over the years is there's a clinical trials unit in the cancer center which treats patients with all sorts of different cancers. And over the years, we've had significant number of patients go on clinical trials to the point that I think Ottawa is now the second largest accruer to patients with cancer on clinical trials. And if you include the REACT program, which we'll talk about later, then we're probably up there being the highest recruiters of clinical trials in Canada. And what these trials offer to patients is if they run out of usual treatment options, and there's really no other treatment for their cancer, then we can look for some newer treatment that has come out that has shown potential to work for the cancers, and we can identify that in the clinical trials. And sometimes it's a combination of drugs that already work, and we're trying to make it even better so patients live longer with a reasonable quality of life. So what we have in Ottawa is a very robust clinical trials group, but now we also have the ability to use some of the technology in-house. So we have a molecular lab that can take patients' tumors and we can sequence them in-house in Ottawa and get the results within days. And if you find a specific change in their DNA, then we can find a medication based on that change. If it's either approved, if not, then look for clinical trials which specifically target that change in the patient's cancer. we have come a long way in sort of molecular biology and specifically in molecular oncology over the last 2 decades. So I think the example we use is the first human genome that was sequenced about 2 decades ago cost over $1 billion. And now we're able to sequence a patient's genome for about $1,000. So over the last 2 decades, the technology has advanced so much that we can readily sequence patients' DNA. So that has helped a lot because obviously the cost before were prohibitory, but now we can sequence patients' cancer. So this was in 2000, and I remember back in 2006 or 7, working with some small sequences of cancer DNA, and it was hard to find. It was these large initiatives funded by multi-billion-dollar grants that were sequencing data, but now we can do that in-house and generate our own data in Ottawa on real patients. So it's come a long way, and the applications of it have changed a lot. So now there's interesting studies that came out in US where they're using a blood test to screen for cancers. So women undergo mammographies or a test in the stool, or you do pap tests to look for cancers. But now in the future, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we would have a blood test that could screen for multiple cancers all at once on a blood test.
Clinical trials are the foundation of clinical research, and in particular, cancer research. Clinical trials are very important when we study new molecules or new drugs and try and understand if they're better than what we currently use as the standard. But sometimes there are several different standards that have never really been compared head-to-head, or there may be areas within a patient's cancer care that aren't specifically studied by new molecules or new drug development. And these areas are sometimes left, and patients and clinicians have to try and decide which is the best therapy without knowing. The REACT program is Rethinking clinical trials, and it's designed to address this gap in knowledge. So patients may want to know, is treatment A or treatment B better? Both are good, but they've never been compared head-to-head. Or they may ask, will treatment C make me feel worse than treatment D? Again, a question that may not have been asked. These are questions that matter to patients. The REACT program allows those questions to be answered in a clinical trial. But these clinical trials are embedded in clinical practice because treatment A and treatment B are both approved and patients have the ability to choose. REACT trials are pragmatic, they're embedded in the clinical care, and they ask questions that matter to patients and their doctors.
Me and my team are responsible for leading the Rethinking Clinical Trials program, known as the REACT program, which is Canada's largest pragmatic trials program. With REACT, our goal is to do trials that matter to patients. We design our trials with feedback from our patients, and we ask our patients, given the treatment that you've had, what are the side effects or what are the ways that we give treatment that we can actually do research to give you the best treatment, not just the best treatment in Ottawa, but the best treatment in the world. In order to perform such cutting edge and groundbreaking research, we need a team. We need multiple players in this team, and we need to use each other's strengths and sometimes weaknesses to help us do the best thing possible for our patients. We're very lucky here in Ottawa that within the Method Centre we have an incredible infrastructure for helping us not only design our trials, but to analyse our trials and get the results out there so that we can actually not just do research for the sake of research, but do research that actually matters. One trial that we recently completed followed feedback from patients about nausea coming from chemotherapy for breast cancer. And despite all advances in the treatment of this disease, nausea remains a pervasive issue for patients. So the REACT program performed the world's first trial to actually use a mathematical model to calculate what is a patient's individual risk of having nausea with chemotherapy, and can we design the anti-nausea treatments ahead of time to stop them getting nausea in the first place. We recently completed this trial and it was an amazing success, and the results have been implemented immediately into the treatment of all patients coming through the program. So this is an example of doing trials that matter. Patients tell us what's wrong, and we design a trial to answer those questions. When I started my career 30 years ago, treating breast cancer was extremely challenging. The cancers were larger, the treatments were less effective, and the majority of patients died of their disease. Because of research, we have totally turned that round. The vast majority of patients are now cured, and I think it's our mandate as healthcare professionals and a hospital like the Ottawa Hospital is to not be complacent. We must continue doing research that improves the outcomes of our patients so that they can get back on with their lives and live the lives they want to live.
Immunotherapies are one of our newest cancer treatments. They exploit the immune system's ability to recognize and target cancer cells because they are different than normal cells. And our understanding of the immune system and how it works has really come from our understanding of viruses and bacteria and how the immune system can protect us from these. Biotherapies are genetically modified cells and viruses that are engineered to attack and kill cancers. And the Ottawa Hospital is leading in the discovery and manufacture of these designer therapies.
Biotherapies are therapeutic molecules or cells or viruses that are actually produced from living tissues. And so they're very compatible with our bodies. Unlike chemotherapy, which is really chemicals that are used to try to poison particular kinds of tumors, for instance, or radiation therapy, which it comes from a radioactive source. These are therapies. Biotherapies are entities that come from our own bodies or from tissues from our own bodies that can be engineered to be highly selective. So whereas chemotherapy and radiation therapy, as we know, are associated with significant side effects because they attack both the cancer and they also damage normal tissues, in principle, biotherapies, because of the way they're engineered, are very selective. They really only attack the malignant tissues. And if anything, they actually have the ability to heal normal tissues and not damage them. So very safe, very selective, and hopefully much more effective than chemotherapy or radiation therapy. I've been a scientist with my own research group for in excess of 34 years now. And when we first started, I think the mainstay of therapy was chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And we didn't see a lot of improvement in patient outcomes. But within the advent of, let's say, the last 15, 20 years or so of biotherapeutics, we're starting to see huge changes in how patients can be treated and the outcomes they can expect. So in some kinds of very advanced forms of melanoma, for instance, patients who really had no chance to respond to standard chemotherapy and radiation therapy regimes, we're now seeing those patients have complete responses and apparently appear to be cured of their disease and have long-term remissions at least. So this is really, I think, a game-changing type of therapy that we'd always dreamed of and worked towards, but had not anticipated to be this significant in this time frame. Another version of this is the CAR T therapy that we talk about lots, chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, which in the case of certain kinds of leukemia can really be life-saving. It can actually change the game for patients who really have no other options and take them from essentially death's door to having a complete response. One of the challenges of developing biotherapies from the ground up basically is having a way to produce them as a pharmaceutical grade product that you can inject into patients. And so at the Ottawa Hospital, we've been investing in what we call biomanufacturing or manufacturing of biological agents for about 15 years or maybe a bit longer now. This is quite unique. There is really no other facility in Canada at an academic facility that actually produces virus-based products that can be used to treat patients. And so these kinds of therapies really, I think Ottawa's really at the forefront of the development of biotherapeutics.
Anyone who's had a loved one diagnosed with cancer knows how devastating this diagnosis can be for the entire family. At the Ottawa Hospital's Psychosocial Oncology program, we provide social, emotional, psychological, and rehabilitation support to the patient and the entire family. We are continuing to innovate to find new ways to help cancer patients have a better cancer journey.
The Psychosocial Oncology program is a team of allied healthcare professionals that really focuses on meeting the individual needs of patients when it comes to address any psychosocial concerns that they might have. These might be spiritual, they might be practical, financial, psychological, emotional, it might be nutritional, it might be functional aspects of the disease. And it's really just assessing with them what those needs are and helping to meet them and address those so that we can decrease that burden that they might be having because of their cancer or their treatment that they're getting. So we have a team that's composed of a variety of healthcare professionals. That includes a team of dietitians who support especially those individuals that are at highest risk from a nutritional perspective. So those are primarily our head and neck and gastrointestinal patient population. We also have speech-language pathologists who work with a very similar patient population who have dysphagia or difficulty swallowing due to their cancer or their treatments. We also have physiotherapists that assist with a number of different things. It might be lymphedema, it might be to help them from a mobility perspective to regain some function after they've had surgery. It might be to decrease risk of falls. And then we fall into our branch of mental health professionals that is really led by our team of social workers. The social workers really work to identify any practical or financial concerns that they might have. This could be help with accommodations or transportation. It could also be helping them to identify other sources of income or medication coverage. And they can also help them from an emotional or psychological perspective, and that they would do in collaboration potentially with our psychiatrist or psychologist. So cancer can be a very challenging experience, not only for the patient, but also their caregivers, their family. And oftentimes what we can do here in the Psychosocial Oncology program is really to help those individuals feel as though they're being supported and they're not as alone as maybe they feel they are through this journey. We're not only about kind of offering supports here in the program itself, but we're really about working with that individual to get them really connected with other individuals, with other resources that are available for them in the community. Maybe these are resources that are closer to home because we serve such a large area. And so there are a lot of support groups in the communities. There's a lot of cancer-specific services out there in the community. There's a lot of things available online that patients can access. And so it's really about really getting them connected and making them feel as though, despite all of this and how hard this can be for them, they're not alone, and that they have supports and people there to help them through this journey.
100 years ago, we were looking for a magic bullet to cure cancer. But today we understand that there won't be one cure for cancer because cancers are so varied. Today, we have 100 new therapies that have created 100 miraculous cures for cancer. But our blue sky, our hope for tomorrow, is that we will have 100,000 or 1,000,000 magic bullets, and curing cancer won't be a miracle anymore. It'll just be what we do.
Very good, Sophie.
Every day, patients arrive at our doors facing an uncertain future. And every day, our work gives them hope for a healthier tomorrow. Join us as we transform the future of healthcare. Join us as we create a better tomorrow.